In the dim morning fog of Smolensk, the air lay still unaware that in moments it would witness one of history's most haunting descents. Controllers watched a single echo crawl across their screens, a presidential jet descending into thick, unyielding cloud. Within the Tupolev's cockpit, the crew strained to see beyond the glass, but outside, there was nothing but endless white. Hours earlier in Warsaw, engines ignited under soft rain, the presidential delegation bound for a solemn memorial flight. 96 souls, including the President of Poland, his wife, and the nation's senior command, all bound for Katyn. As the Tupolev lifted from Warsaw, the morning cloud swallowed it whole, leaving only the echo of its engines. Over the Vistula, the flight seemed routine, altitude steady, voices calm, unaware of the storm of decisions to come. The line on radar would soon fade, but not before the crew faced the impossible, between duty, pressure, and disappearing ground. On the morning of April 10th, Poland's presidential aircraft awaited departure, a mission born of memory and mourning. President Lech Kaczyński and his delegation were en route to Katyn to honor thousands lost in a massacre decades before. The Tupolev's crew, experienced yet under pressure, ran their final checks as the fog outside thickened. 96 people boarded, leaders, families, and crew sharing quiet conversation beneath the hum of engines. Twin Soloviev engines came alive, their low rumble breaking the morning stillness. The journey to Smolensk had begun. As the aircraft rolled toward the runway, those on the ground paused, watching their leaders disappear into the mist. At 0727, the Tupolev lifted from Warsaw, vanishing almost instantly into the low, heavy cloud. Climbing through the haze, the world outside turned featureless, a white void stretching in every direction. Breaking through the fog, sunlight met the wings, the last calm before the descent back into darkness. Inside, there was peace, quiet voices, steady flight. No one could sense that this calm was only minutes from ending. As the Tupolev crossed into Russian airspace, the skies dimmed, clouds rising higher, weather radar painting a field of gray. At Smolensk, air traffic controllers peered through fog that swallowed the airfield radar barrel while holding the incoming signal. The crew prepared for descent, calling altitudes by memory, their instruments clear, their outside view blind. Visibility dropped below 400 meters. The fog was no longer a cloud layer, it was a wall. Inside, few noticed the change, only a subtle vibration in their cups and a long silence from the intercom. Smolensk cleared them for approach, but without ILS guidance, the descent would depend on eyesight and raw instruments. They began descending through 1,000 meters, 900, 800, trusting their readings more than their instincts. An automated voice called terrain ahead. The captain replied calmly, "We see nothing. Continue descent." They broke through at 200 meters, forest shapes drifting like ghosts below, too close, too fast. Voices overlapped, altimeter calls, ground readings, tower instructions, each one contradicting the last. At 200 feet, the radar flashed red, the ground rushing upward unseen. The captain called go around, but it was too late. Their descent had already met the forest line. At 10:41 a.m., the Tupolev vanished into the Smolensk forest, swallowed by fog, silence, and disbelief. Controllers waited for confirmation, but the radar was blank, the echoes gone. For a moment, the entire world was still. Then the news began to spread. The forest fell silent. A faint hiss of torn metal and wind marked the end of the Tupolev's final descent. Within seconds, the tower sent the alarm rescue units to coordinates 2 kilometers short of the runway. Fire crews and medics raced through the fog, guided by only a compass and fragments of radio coordinates. The rescuers stepped into the silence of splintered birch and steel, unsure what they were walking into. They found the first fragment, the national colors still visible, the silence absolute. Visibility was less than 30 meters, every silhouette could be wreckage, every shadow a person. The Tupolev had disintegrated upon impact, pieces scattered across 400 meters of wet ground. Contact with the crew never reappeared. The radios answered only with static. Small fires still burned, not explosions, just remnants of jet fuel and fractured wires. Each fragment was logged, photographed, tagged, a slow process of rebuilding the last seconds. Among the wreckage, symbols of state, of identity, of lives once held in protocol and honor. When they saw the insignia, silence fell again. The truth settled heavier than the fog itself. Command posts formed quickly, mapping coordinates, confirming what no one wished to believe. Air reconnaissance confirmed total loss, no survivors. The wreckage scattered like leaves of a broken flag. By noon, the crash zone was secured. The air smelled of rain, fuel, and sorrow. Investigators began documenting every circuit board, every lever, evidence of a tragedy too complex to summarize. As rescue turned to recovery, grief transcended language, two nations united in mourning. By nightfall, the forest whispered only echoes, a scene preserved in fog, in memory, in silence. Morning came quietly over the wreckage, the fog unchanged, the silence now filled with the footsteps of investigators. Teams from the Interstate Aviation Committee arrived, first specialists trained for precision amid chaos. By mid-morning, Polish representatives joined the scene, grief shadowed by duty. The crash site expanded as evidence surfaced, each marker a fragment of a nation's loss. Amid twisted aluminum and wires, they found it, the aircraft's final witness, the flight data recorder. Moments later, the cockpit voice recorder surfaced, a tape holding voices from a doomed descent. The recorders were sealed under joint supervision, bound for analysis in Moscow. Using digital mapping, they reconstructed the spread of impact, every fragment aligning with the descending trajectory. Joint teams began reviewing data, aligning maps, coordinates, and weather reports minute by minute. Meteorological records confirmed near zero visibility, fog thicker than the human eye could penetrate. Air traffic recordings revealed the calm professionalism right until the ground proximity alarms began. Data showed conflicting altitude readings, instruments confused by pressure and terrain. Each component was catalogued, each dial reconnected in simulation to reconstruct the final cockpit state. As investigators worked, the world's cameras turned toward Smolensk, the tragedy now a headline. In Warsaw, streets filled with silence. Candles replaced applause, sorrow replaced ceremony. The flight path revealed the fatal truth, the aircraft descended below glide slope long before the runway lights appeared. Transcripts exposed the final moments, confusion, warnings, and the desperate struggle for altitude. Statements began to differ. Technical findings collided with political sensitivities. Despite questions and grief, both sides paused, united by loss, before answers. As emotions subsided, analysis began. The data held the story, and soon the story would hold the world's attention. The black box, silent witness of the final minutes, was recovered from the Smolensk forest, its casing scarred but intact. In Moscow, investigators began decoding the flight data line by line, searching for truth buried in static. Data revealed a steady descent below minimum altitude, warnings ignored as the fog thickened. In the final 30 seconds, the pilots struggled to find the runway, blind to everything beyond the glass. Pull up, the system screamed, but the call came too late. Voice analysis revealed mounting tension, moments of confusion, urgency, and human fear. They fought the aircraft's descent manually, each correction lost in the heavy fog. Terrain warnings filled the cockpit, but visual contact was impossible, visibility under 500 meters. The altimeter misread due to barometric error, placing the plane higher than it truly was. At just 100 meters, the aircraft cleared the treeline, seconds from disaster. The data spiked: rapid descent, nose-up correction, and then total signal loss. Every piece of wreckage was laid out, each fragment whispering a clue to what truly happened. Inside the cockpit recordings, investigators heard composure, professionalism, and disbelief. The final verdict: controlled flight into terrain, a tragedy born from weather, misjudgment, and pressure. The black box spoke at last, its truth etched forever in the memory of aviation safety. In the hours after the crash, silence fell across the Smolensk forest, a silence filled with shock and disbelief. Rescue crews marked the wreckage field, still unaware that the entire Polish delegation was gone. Among the debris, fragments of lives, symbols of duty, faith, and a nation's service. In Warsaw, disbelief turned to mourning as confirmation arrived: no survivors. The nation stood in unity, candles flickering against the cold wind, their grief bound in silence. Bodies returned home under the national flag, honor, sorrow, and disbelief intertwined. Each coffin carried not only a life lost but a chapter of Poland's history. The farewell was more than personal, it was a moment of national identity redefined by tragedy. Faith carried the nation's grief as prayers echoed for unity and peace. Thousands filled the streets, rain mingling with tears, a people united in mourning. In the months that followed, investigators worked to piece together responsibility and truth. Findings showed a perfect storm, dense fog, misread altimeter, and a descent made on faith, not sight. The reconstructed flight revealed a heartbreaking precision. The aircraft flew exactly where the instruments said it wasn't. The final report closed the case, but not the questions. Politics soon filled the silence, truth left behind. Years later, the Smolensk memorial rose etched with names, guarded by time and memory. A decade later, the flag still lower, the echoes of that morning forever shaping a nation. The legacy became a lesson of aviation safety, responsibility, and remembrance. Out of the fog, Poland rose scarred, united, forever changed. Years later, the forest stands quiet again, nature reclaiming the ground where history was written in sorrow. The runway where the journey began now lies silent, a line between duty and destiny. Each name etched here marks more than loss, it tells of service, of families, of a nation's enduring heart. From the fog of that morning rose a promise to remember, to learn, and to never forget. A decade on, the names still glow not in sorrow, but in remembrance. Each flower laid today whispers a story of duty, of loss, of unity beyond grief. In Warsaw, the evening light carries memory, a nation remembering in silence. Behind each name, a world once lived, now remembered in every echo of that morning. Crash deck diaries crafted to honor truth, memory, and the skis that bind us. Above the clouds, the story never ends, it simply soars beyond our reach. This has been a Crash Deck Diaries production where every flight has a story.